Saddle up your horses.
Pitter patter. Let's get at her. It is another episode of the Mainly Broncos podcast. Thank you guys so much for hopping in. We have a loaded show for you. It is going to be the schedule preview show where we break down the schedule that just got released. It is the Super Bowl for the social media team for not just the Broncos, but the 31 other teams that are part of the NFL. So thank you guys so much for joining us. And obviously, before we dive into any of it, I want to do a big shout out to Jordan for holding down the fort. While I was gone on vacation, he did a bang up job, hosting in my stead. He can officially say he filled my shoes of knowing what it felt like of hosting a show. So Jordan, you did a good job. You did a good job.
I appreciate that. I still apologize to the viewers that day having to listen to me for a longer extended period of time. But hosting a show is a lot more difficult than I thought. Not going to lie. But that's why the best people do it, and that's why I got you. So we're good.
What was the exact words that you sent me?
Man, I texted you right after, and I texted a lot of things. I was
it was like, man, Cam makes this look easy. I'm gonna savor that, by the way.
Yeah.
So make sure if you guys are tuning into the stream and you guys are first time watchers of the Mainly Broncos stream, thank you guys so much for joining us. Obviously, we said it's a big show. We're gonna be doing the schedule preview and breakdown of the 2026 Denver Broncos schedule. First things first, hit the like button for the show and share. Feel free to share, to your friends and have their friends tell their friends that this stream is going live and obviously about this network and the podcast, the Mainly Broncos podcast. Hit the subscribe button for the MHRT network page. I believe we're creeping ever so close to about 1,700 subscribers. So thank you to everybody that is a member as well as a subscriber to the MHRT network. Hit the subscribe button for the Mainly Broncos page as well. So it's an absolute blast to get a chance to finally talk about what is going to be coming, if you will, with the 2026 season. We actually just wrapped up the NFL draft. Jordan, I know you spent a great deal about the draft, and so we finally had the schedule. We knew who the opponents were, all right? Like, we know who the opponents were. It was just a matter of how can we fit the pieces of where they're playing, who they're playing, the weeks they're playing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and the schedule turned out to be very, very brutal to start with. But towards the later parts of the schedule, it looks to ease up a bit. But we'll get into that real shortly.
So we'll just do a little bit of a brief overview. What did you think of the Broncos schedule release video?
The schedule release video was better than years prior. I will say that. You're never going to win this day. The Chargers will always win.
There will be favorites, yeah.
Yeah, their social media team, if their roster were to play like their social media team, they were to win a playoff game, unlike their quarterback. They are that good. They will win the day every single time. But the Broncos did do a lot better than years prior. It was a lot more content and a lot more jabs at other teams. So I very much enjoyed it in comparison from years prior.
When you actually look at the I believe it was the Colts. The Colts was like the other one that really kind of challenged, right? Like really kind of challenged the Chargers for probably like one of the better schedule releases that they did.
Yeah.
But I will say one of the because the right, like when you kind of piece it together for the Chargers, because they're the biggest team, right, in the NFL.
Yep.
If we were running, who has the best schedule or least video, it would be the Los Angeles Chargers, since they're the biggest if team. What's up, Victory Lap? And what's up, Alex? Thanks for hopping in. So let's kind of take a dive into this. We don't want to spend too much time, obviously, talking about some of the others, because it gets exciting to talk about the others, because then you kind of lose track about obviously talking about some of the games, if you will, on hand. Obviously, yes, if we have enough time, we'll touch on something that might be transpiring for what's been going on that Instagram of Von Miller's, if you will. And what happened last night of posting, what was it, 2-3 stuff back to back?
Yep.
Of Broncos. Actually, if you will, it was the same post for someone else who's a friend of the show, Broncos for Dummies, Dez. Basically reshared his post through hers and stuff on it. It was just wild. So we'll talk about Vaughn and whether or not he should come back, should he come back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right, Jordan. Let's kind of talk about this. It's not necessarily the biggest ideal start, right? Like, it's not the most ideal start when you think of the Denver Broncos schedule. Sometimes, and more often than not, you would like to have maybe like a cupcake game or two, like to begin and kind of get your feet wet a little bit. But here, I think there's a lot of ways to look at this, right? Like, there's a lot of ways to look at this from both the negative side of things and obviously the positive side of things. The negative is obviously it's a very rough beginning in the first six of the 8 games, right? But I think that for the sake of with where the Broncos were at, and you and I talked about it in the green room, is just that when you look at this Denver Broncos team and them not starting fast, this will afford them the opportunity where they can't start slow. Like they can't, and so I just think that when you look at it from that standpoint, they really do kind of start off with a bit of a bang if you're going to Arrowhead, right? And then they go face the Jaguars and then the Rams and then the 49ers. And then they face off against the Chargers and Seahawks for those 6 weeks. And obviously then they played the Chiefs. They're in that week 8. That is a pretty brutal stretch for the first 6 of those 8 weeks.
Yeah, and the one that I always look at for every schedule yearly, I look at the Thursday night football game and then the game before that to see if we're in a physical game before that Thursday night football game. Because if we are, that takes a real toll on you in that Thursday night football game. And Lord and behold, the Broncos play the Chargers in Los Angeles, which will be a very, very physical game. And then we'll have to turn around on short week's notice and play the defending Super Bowl champs. So it is that 2-game stretch is also going to be rough as well, especially a toll on their bodies, especially with a couple of guys recovering from injuries that they've had in the offseason, for example, like Bo and his ankle and him getting acclimated and stuff like that. But that's really gonna test the Broncos there in that 2-game stretch in 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, it is. That is going to be really something I think is going to be worth monitoring. And I mean, obviously, it's the given. You want to make sure that you are of the utmost health at that point in time. And I mean, I think the Bo injury itself, you and I can probably say that it's like it's been definitely blown out of proportion and everything for that injury. So I mean, we're all expecting it to to be a thing. And I mean, hopefully, and that's the other side of this too, is that hopefully that there's not really some injury concern. Speaking of that, though, like to where you are beginning the season with a bit of an uphill climb due to a rather significant injury. Not saying, Bo or anybody, but just like if there's some significant injury, you'll face a bit of an uphill climb on something like that. But I think that in years past, right, and you look at the way that things have been structured, under Sean Payton and everything, I think it's a pretty safe assumption that the Denver Broncos have to at least go 3-3 in that stretch.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the minimum. If you walk out of there 3-3, I'd be happy. I'm not gonna lie. Even though that sounds not like a winner mentality, but I cannot stress enough the brutal 6-game stretch that is. I mean, between the Chiefs, even the Jags. I mean, I know the Jags beat us last year and kind of caught our attention, but I think they're even going to be better this year, if I'm being quite honest. So 3-3, and I'm happy. If we go 4-2 or better, we're looking pretty good for the rest of the year.
Yeah. Man, but I think you and I kind of touched on it. It's just like when you look at specifically at those games and you look at them and you look at the way that it's been kind of structured, I do like the fact that they did get that, as someone mentioned about, to get the Jags, right, to get the get back. I think having them early is really a good thing. And I think having some of these teams early is a very good thing. Yeah. But it's also the same. I think some of these teams and these playoff teams can see the exact same thing too. But for the 49ers specifically, it's going to be very interesting because they're such a very different organization than where things have been, right? Yeah. And I think that's of all the games. I think when you look at that 6-game stretch, it's a big wild card. Like it is a big wild card for that 6-game stretch because, like what 49ers team specifically is going to show up. You know what I mean? Their playmaker unit, at least going into where we are right now, is not the best. Brandon Ayuk will not be a member of the, of those 49ers, whether it still says that he's on the roster, right? Yeah, he's not going to be on that team. The wide receiver room has still a bunch of unknowns, right? Aside from Mike Evans, right? Now who just got added. So it's Pearsall, Mike Evans, and this new guy, right? Deshaun Stribling, who they just got from Ole Miss. I liked him coming out, but very interesting. So we got to start fast. And so then it goes forward. They do have a really solid bye. The Broncos do have a really solid bye at week 10. So they've wrapped up that first 6-week stretch. Then they face the Cardinals. And then they finish the Chiefs, which I think has been one of the things that I've been asking for in talking with Jordan and some of the friends on this network. Is just like I was hoping that we could actually play the Chiefs or Chargers twice before the bye week. And so obviously we've kind of made it known of like where we feel about the Chiefs are. But if they do happen to have a bit of a resurgent year, you knocked them out. You knocked them out before the bye week. And so you have the chance to own that tiebreaker, before the bye week, so that if things do kind of percolate a little bit for the Chiefs, you own that. Like you own that tiebreaker. So going forward, it should be pretty easy for you after that. And then after that, then you have the Panthers. So another NFC South type of game, if you will, for the Panthers. But that is in Carolina. Yep. Right? Like that is in Carolina. And then after the bye week, then we go and we play the Raiders. And then the Steelers. This is where it gets to be a little bit easy. It's a bit of an easier stretch after that 6-game gauntlet. So you have the Raiders, the Steelers, the Dolphins, the Jets, because the Broncos seemingly, for some reason, will always play the Jets now. I believe, what is it now? 6 years? Is that what it is?
It feels like a decade.
It feels like a decade where they've basically been playing the Jets for quite some time. They are the new Patriots, which is so funny because it's the AFC East. But, like, they are the new Patriots. I remember that one stretch where it was, like, 10 or 15 years ago where the Broncos just played the Patriots constantly, right? Like, constant. And that was even before Manning. But, like, they played them constantly. And so then you have the Dolphins, the Jets, the Raiders, and then the Bills on Christmas Day. There goes the PTSD gift right there. The Broncos are playing on Christmas. But the good news is they're home. They do have a home Christmas game. And then probably the one game that you and I are a bit weary of at this point in the season is that New England Patriots game. You don't know if it's going to be a Saturday game. You don't know if it's going to be a Sunday game. You don't even know if it's going to end up being a bit of a primetime game. That's kind of like one of those ones that might be up in the air. The Broncos have 5 primetime games, but there could be a 6th in there, depending on the Chargers and Patriots there to end the season. So that, in a nutshell, is the Denver Broncos 2026 regular season schedule. And I believe it was announced that their preseason is the Falcons, Packers, and Vikings. Yes, Vikings, yeah.
So yeah, with this regular season schedule, so that little stretch after the bye with the Raiders, Steelers, Dolphins, Jets, and the Raiders again, those are 5 games where they need to go 5-0, minimum 4-1. And I would even lump in the Panthers there before the bye week, but I think the Panthers are a lot better than what people expect. And that's going to be a tougher game, especially in Charlotte. And I just have more respect for the Panthers than I think the majority.
They are slept on.
Yeah. But that 5-game stretch after the bye is where the Broncos really need to rack up those wins, because you never know what's going to happen in that beginning part of that stretch with the 6 games. And then even the last 3 with the Bills, the Patriots, and the Chargers. So you just don't know. That 5-game stretch needs to be 4-1 minimum.
Right. And one of the things that you and when Brandon is ready and he hops on, one of the things we talk about all the time is trap game, right? And we talk about this nature of a trap game. Now, obviously, people have defined trap games differently, right? And some people have said it's a lesser opponent before you face a bigger opponent. That's kind of like how I viewed it a little bit. But there's also one where it could be like maybe a lesser opponent, if you will, but you're playing a tougher opponent. And so it's just one where you kind of have a tendency to kind of look, it just different ways of how you want to like interpret it, if you will. The game, though, that probably I would say stands out as a trap game, at least on the initial card, is unfortunately a game that happens to be in the first 6 to 8 games of the regular season for me, and it would have to be the Arizona Cardinals. As weird as that sounds,
interesting.
Just because the Broncos do face the Chiefs, they're relatively early in terms of wrapping them up. And they do have that home game, is that you have the Cardinals, and then the Chiefs, right?
Yeah.
And obviously I know that the Chiefs are going to be a bit of they're going to still kind of progress as far as their roster, because they've got a lot to work on in terms of their roster. But it's just that kind of stretch of games. It can make or break the idea of them going 3-3 in that 6-game stretch to 4-4 in an 8-game stretch.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, when you say like that, I do agree with you that Cardinals game can be a trap game for sure. I mean, with them adding, Jeremiah Love, hopefully, in my case, Carson Beck is the starting quarterback there, and he gets, his opportunity there. But that's also going to play a benefit in terms for the Broncos too, facing a rookie quarterback, so they can kind of mess with him and stuff like that. Vance Joseph has a good track record against rookie quarterbacks, but the Cardinals roster, they have some core pieces on that roster that are not bad, at least in my opinion. Hopefully, for Marvin Harrison Jr.'s sake, he does have that breakout year. I mean, it's going to be tough again because of the quarterback situation. really don't know if it's going to be Carson Beck, Jacoby Brisket, Garner Minshew, and yes, I said
Did you say brisket? Did you say
Yeah,
brisket?
I just said Brisket. Yeah, that's what me and my brother call him, Jacoby Brisket. So it just flows out the tongue now. But we don't know who's going to be the quarterback. It's going to be
I'll have to fact check that.
there you go. with the new meme.
Yeah.
But listen, they have a good trio of running backs with Jeremiah Love, Tyler Algier, who they just signed,
Yeah.
James Conner coming off that injury. Their offensive line, honestly, not that bad. That left side, good. Right side needs a little bit of work, and then the defense, they have some pieces there. They have Walter Nolan, who they drafted 2 years ago. They have Will Johnson at corner, who hopefully he can have his breakout year for the Cardinals' sake. Also, they have Buda Baker there. So they have some pieces there on that team. So for sure, trap game.
And it's an interesting one because, like, it's also, at least in the beginning part of the season, it's the beginning of the season for Mike LaFleur, right? Yeah. And if there's one thing we do know, is that at least from what we see with Matt LaFleur, we'll see if the coaching genes are about similar between Matt and Mike. But some people have raved about Mike LaFleur, so we'll definitely see what happens there. But yeah, it is definitely going to be one that it's going to be worth following. One of the things that you and I kind of touched on a little bit is what is a game that you think could surprise some people? So obviously we said trap game, but like if there's a game where you could kind of see like, okay, it's kind of the same simple question, if you will, of trap game, but it's like one that could really kind of get dicey, as you kind of like are rounding down or at maybe the midway point of a season, and everything. Cause right. Like, always they say like, the meat and bones are, once you're through the first part of a schedule, you kind of have an idea of who you are.
Yeah.
So who is one of those teams that you kind of look through that maybe on that upcoming schedule and upcoming games that it might get a little bit interesting?
Man, since we're not talking about lesser opponents, I will say that team that may surprise us, I think it's going to be the Carolina Panthers.
Do you still think it's going to be the Panthers?
Yeah. I was going to say the Jets because I do think the Jets had a really good draft, and those pieces are really going to help them this year. Obviously, I don't think they're going to be a playoff team or even close to it, but they will be in games that they're not supposed to be, at least in my opinion. But I do think the Panthers game, at least in my opinion, that Week 9 game in Charlotte, that could be a game where the Broncos can lose. And it's not a game that they should lose because of, they have the better roster, they have the better coaches, they have the better quarterback. But the Panthers are a sneaky good football team. I do like their new wide receiver that they drafted, Chris Brazil from Tennessee. I like him a lot. They just got, with their first round pick, they solidified one of their tackle spots. They don't know if he's going to be left or right tackle. I'm assuming he's going to be a right tackle. And then their tight end room, with Tommy Tremble, Jatavian Sanders, who I think still has a bright future with them.
Jonathan Brooks.
Jonathan Brooks now with the running back room. Hopefully he's healthy this year. Chuba Hubbard. And defensively, Derek Brown's going to be healthy to start the year.
JC Horn's been pretty solid.
JC Horn. So they again, that's another team that has pieces. They just signed Jalen Phillips. That was their big free agent signing alongside
surprised everybody, actually.
So alongside Devin Lloyd. So the Panthers made some moves this year. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're in a barn burner with them.
I think the easy answer of that is to say Panthers, but look, I want to preface it this way. I think the Broncos still have a pretty good shot, to have at the very least 11 wins this year, right? Like, when you kind of look at it and you look at probably their floor, I think 11 wins is that floor. But one of the teams, and I know again we dog on them and we kind of talk about them as far as being the lesser of a division, and maybe it's just the theme of continuing this idea of trap and everything, but like there's also the idea of teams surprising, right? And we've seen situations where teams just play really hot, right? Like teams play really hot in a certain situation, and it's due to the level of quarterback play. And it is the Las Vegas Raiders. I know that sounds crazy as far as a team that I think, and I just say that just because of where things are at with Clint Kubiak. He's a heck of a football coach. And with where that schedule is kind of lumped together, it makes it really interesting given the fact it's in the middle part of that schedule, right? But I think one of the better parts of that is you face them after basically 3 games. It's like you face them again after a 3-game stretch. So you face them relatively soon. Yeah. But it's just the idea of what is that going to end up being like after the bye? And I think to the Broncos' advantage, they have the bye week on that. Because hypothetically, let's just say that, Kirk Cousins, which I think we all expect, is that Kirk Cousins will be starting for probably the first 4 to 6 games, right? 4 to 6 games, if you will. But let's just say he doesn't, right? Like, let's just say he doesn't, and Fernando Mendoza is the one who was starting from week 1. You and I both know some of the best cases, if not the best case, is for a rookie to start right away and get the ground rolling, for them and their chemistry with the team and wide receivers and everything. So let's just say Fernando Mendoza is starting there in week 1. There is a very real possibility that Mendoza is not the same quarterback that he is come from week 1 to week 11. And obviously that means both things, Jordan. That means both things. He could be worse. He could be in over his head, because right at that point you're talking about right at or the same amount of college games at that point, right? Yeah. And so you're going to be adding about 4 or 5 more games, right? To that. So I think it's a very interesting situation. Do I actually feel like it, confidently it is the Raiders? Not necessarily, but it's just it's those teams and those types of situations that also too with it being a division game that really does kind of sneak up on you.
Also, the good part about it is that we'll be facing them after the bye week, so we have a bye week to prepare for them, just for the team to get a little mental reset in the middle of the season as well. So, and also another good thing, even if Mendoza does start week 1 and he gets all those reps before our game, the Broncos defense is not your ordinary defense.
Agree.
So that's also another good part that plays in towards Denver's hands here. So we'll see how the Mendoza experiment goes with the Raiders. They're another one that had a good or so draft, but now it's just putting it all together. Now that they have a coach that's well respected, they are going to be a little bit better than what people think.
Now, obviously, I touched on a little bit there, Jordan, and I want to know what the people in the comments think about this, because obviously this is a really popular conversation now. Specifically, when you look, it's the initial conversation when things get announced as far as like, okay, these are your opponents of who we'll face in 2026, and they'll do the exact same thing in, this year. Like they'll release and say, hey, these are your opponents for 2027. And then at this point in 2027 is when we'll get the schedule again for 2027. But at that point, it's like the beginning start of, well, what's their floor? What's their floor win total? For this upcoming season. So for 2026, Jordan, and for people that are in the comments, I would like to know, what would you say their floor is in win-loss record?
I'm going to say their floor is 10 wins. I think 10 wins is a respectable amount. I'm going to go, are we going to do ceiling now or just floor?
No, I think it's with the moment you do floor, I think it's really appropriate you do ceiling too, because you can't talk about one without the other.
So I'll go 4-10 wins, and I'll go ceiling 13. And the reason why I say that is I do expect us not to win 14 games like how we did last year.
Impossible to, yeah.
And I'm not saying it because we're not a better team. I think this team is going to be a lot better than last year's team, in my opinion, actually. But just due to how hard the schedule is. And also, teams have gotten better. They really have. So just with the harder schedule and how things have shaken out a little bit, I do expect 10 to 13 wins for this Broncos team. Would I be surprised if they repeat 14? I'm not gonna lie, I'd be pretty surprised because of just how brutal the schedule is. But 10 to 13 wins and just get into the postseason, and you're good to go.
I do think 10. I think whenever you are a Super Bowl contender, right? Or just even just a very like border, like right at that playoff contender, I think your floor probably should automatically be 10.
Yeah.
Just because 10 should at the very least get you in the playoffs, right? Like, I mean, it would be impossible for a team that is not 10 wins to not get in the playoffs, right? And so I think 10 has to be the default as far as your floor. I know I mentioned 11 earlier, but the more you kind of talk through it and then listening to what you were saying is like, yeah, 10 probably has to be your floor. And I would even agree with you too. I think it's also a bit obnoxious to think probably 14. Now, obviously, being Bronco fans and fans in general, I think it's really easy to want or expect the best of this football team. And so I think it's fair for teams to be like, oh, we'll go with 14 wins, right? I think it's fair still to probably expect that. But I would say probably 12-5 just to maybe be on the safe side of that. But I think the other thing, the other side of this too, and it's one of the reasons why I was a bit cautious to a degree, Jordan, when we were doing the stuff last year and the predictions last year, because I initially was thinking like, oh, well, let's roll with the idea that like let's go and have 12-5, 13-4, or even 14-3 type of prediction last year. And don't get me wrong, they achieved that. The Broncos achieved that last year. But I think that when you look at it from the standpoint of those records, you and I both know, for as much as chaos of that AFC conference is, if you are 12-5 at the very least, you are boundary number 1 seed, in the conference, right? And so if you can be right at that 12-5 or even that 13-4, you are doing quite well. And so I think that the 12-5 record, I think, is kind of where I have things right now.
Yeah, I mean, it would be hard to argue that. I mean, again, just with the schedule being a little bit tougher than last year's, obviously you have a first place schedule, which means obviously that we won the division last year, and then also playing the NFC West does you no favors whatsoever. But again, I do think the roster is good enough to muster minimum of 10 games, and then also steal a few of these games on the early part of the stretch. Because if the Broncos do go 4-2 to start that 6-game stretch, then you can start talking about 12 wins. But again, it all depends on how these Broncos start off.
Yeah. And maybe that's a fair point as far as like their floor. It just depends on that beginning schedule, right? Like I think that's the part of it too. To kind of like bring it back full circle for what we were talking about at the beginning of this, Jordan, is if they go 14-3 again, it's because they went and darn near went undefeated in that stretch, or only lost 2 of those games, in the 6 of these, right? Right. So I think that when you look at it from that standpoint, if they go 14-3 again, well, for one, there's a lot of ways to unpack this. if you go 14-3, you only lose one game the rest of the way
Yeah.
at that point. And that means that you're encountering almost a 10-game winning streak again, which I think is also a bit premature to think that that's going to be happening as well. Not saying it can't happen, but I think it's a bit premature to think that, oh, we're going to have another 10-game winning streak. But if they are 14-3 again, it's because they were 4-2 in that weeks 1 through 6.
Yep. I mean, out of those 6 games, you would like to at least win those AFC games because they're going to matter. So the Chiefs, obviously, Jaguars, and then the Chargers game. You can afford losing those 3 NFC games, but I will say I think the 49ers game's a little bit more winnable than what it appears. Again, I'm never going to doubt a Kyle Shanahan team, but just in terms of roster-wise, I do think the Broncos have a better roster than the 49ers. But that Rams and Seahawks game, especially the Seahawks game on that Thursday Night Football, are going to be a bit tough. But I will say that Rams game being at home does make a big difference.
And Seahawks game being at home.
Correct.
Yeah. And so the fact that you're going to have that, I think, is at least good for you. So let's kind of do something literally fun as far as like with those 6 games. What's your confidence level? If you're, we'll just start with the Chiefs in week 1, right? Like the first early confidence level, not like it's a different way to look at it, like the betting line, right? Like, like I think they said the early betting line for the Chiefs is like 2.5 or whatever.
Yeah.
As far as being overdogs. But like for us and just kind of looking at it from the game side of things, we'll just go off of like percentage of confidence, just starting with week 1. What is your percentage of confidence of the Chiefs game?
I'm going to say I'm pretty high up there. I'm like 80 to 90% confident in this game just because the first game of Mahomes coming back from injury is going to be against a defense that he has struggled against in recent years, even though people won't like to admit it. But he has struggled mightily against the Broncos defense. This defense also hits the quarterback at the highest rate in the past 2 years, and this is going to be his first game. I understand it's in Arrowhead and all that, but for that to be your very first game coming off that injury, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
Well, I said it on 5280 on Tuesday. It was just like everybody makes it as far as this is a pro Mahomes thing, and it might just from a prime time side of things. But if I'm actually Mahomes, and I like I said, I said this on 5280, but it's like if I'm actually Mahomes, I'm actually very pissed at the NFL because, here I am. I'm trying to recover from an ACL, MCL. There's no guarantee I'll be ready for week 1. And you just set me up with the best defense in football to start the season. I mean, obviously I'm in my own building, but you set me up for a primetime game on Monday Night Football where everybody's going to be fresh, and I might not even be fresh.
Yep.
So if I'm Mahomes himself, I'm actually mad about the scheduling. And I think for my own sake, I could care less if it was home or away. Because, I mean, I will never say that I will, go against the idea of having a home opener on week 1. I love the idea of having a home opener on week 1. But I think just for the Chiefs, I think having that game early specifically in Arrowhead, that early specifically, is a massive win. And I'm actually not expecting Mahomes to play week 1. I'm not. I'm firmly under the idea that Justin Fields would be starting. That said, it's pretty obvious the schedule makers and the script writers of the NFL are wanting Mahomes to start that game if they're scheduling a primetime game like that.
Yeah, and I think the NFL wouldn't put that as the first Monday Night Football game if they didn't know that Mahomes was going to be healthy enough to play, and even Bo Nix. So I think we can expect both of those QBs to be out there for their teams. But the reason I'm just so confident in that game is not just because we swept them last year. It's more so because there's a lot more positives in terms of advantages for the Broncos than there is for the Chiefs. Because also remember, Jalen Waddle's debut for the Broncos will be against a rookie cornerback. And I understand that Mansour Delaney is a very, very good corner out of LSU. I truly do understand that. But to be making your NFL debut on primetime against one of the fastest receivers in the league, that's a lot on your plate. And surely he can step up to the occasion. But that is a lot to ask, especially against a Chiefs team that also comes out the gates very, very slowly as well. I mean, everybody talks about the Broncos that are very known to come out the gates, early and struggle. Andy Reid has done that a few times too with the Chiefs. So at the end of the day, the Broncos are also known for these primetime struggles. This Monday Night Football game might be a primetime struggle.
You know what's interesting? As we're kind of talking through this 6-game stretch, and I'm not trying to make it seem like this, again, that are like this 6-game stretch is maybe easier than people are giving me credit for. But there is one game that I am very thankful it's in the very early slate of the season so the Broncos can get that bad taste out of their mouth. For what happened last year, and it's the Jaguars. I actually love the fact that they did that for a week 2 game. It could have been fine if it was a week 3 game. And I think that the fact that the Broncos were, I wouldn't say gifted, but they were given an opportunity where you had the Chiefs week 1 and the Jags 2, so that they can be able to really get off the mental side of things for where they were in that game, because they are going to play pretty pissed off with that game, for where they were. I mean, obviously people have made the comparisons, like just the game side of things, to where the Jags were and where the Broncos were within a Super Bowl. So a lot of people made that after that game, and it was pretty noteworthy comparisons. So yeah, that was definitely one where I'm circling that. And I think just if you're kind of nitpicking the first stretch of 6 games, Jordan, I love the fact that they have the Jags game in week 2, that they can be able to do that and really kind of, feed off that in week 2. And I think going off the confidence part, I think for the Chiefs, I would probably put it between that 75 to 85% confidence. Because you still want to hold out that 25% that Mahomes might play or might not play. And the Jags, I think, is, interestingly enough, I think the confidence is in that same realm of that 75, maybe 70 to 80, just because it's the beginning portion of the season for them, and they started out red hot. But I think if you can at least afford to go 2-0 in the early stages of that season, you and I both know, and stuff with sports, Jordan, that the mental 6 inches that it does for an athlete can really give them a bit of some confidence to begin the season. And so to beat 2-0, hypothetically, and then going and facing the Rams in another home game, I think would be massive for their psyche.
Yeah, and the Jaguars lost some pieces this offseason. So it's not going to be the core pieces are there for Jacksonville. But they missed some guys that are going to hurt them more than help them, in my opinion. I mean, and we can start off with, the running back, Travis Etienne, with him leaving. Their running back situation, a little bit shaky, in my opinion. But, they did sign Amir Abdullah. I don't know if he's really going to,
The ageless Amir Abdullah.
The ageless Amir Abdullah. It seems like he's been in the league for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, just, losing a guy like Devin Lloyd, Greg Newsome, Travis Etienne, who all departed in free agency, big. They traded, that defensive lineman to the Falcons. He was a good depth guy, but still, that's another piece gone. And, they added some guys. They're not out of this world,
Travis Hunter making possibly a switch from wide receiver to defensive back, maybe full time.
That is also true, and we didn't see him play last year because he was hurt against us. So that will be also a new face that will be playing. But I think that game is going to be a little bit easier this year than it was last year.
The other side of it too was Parker Washington was a thing. The first or I should say it was like the 3-game stretch or whatever, the 4 game stretch. There was probably no wide receiver in football in that 4-game stretch that was as good than Parker Washington before he came to Denver. So it'll be a little bit interesting to see, and I mean, as far as like probably the biggest things that the Jags did on the offensive side of the ball was reshape or upgrade their tight end room even more, because they went out and drafted Nate Borkacher in a surprising move in the 2nd round. I'm a big Nate Borkacher fan. I'm going to let the record show, obviously, but I did not have him in the 2nd round. So I'll be the first to tell you that I did not have him in the 2nd round, nor the other tight end that they got. That they decided to take a little bit later. So they kind of made their room a little bit more comfortable for them to go along with Brenton Strange. So yeah, it's going to be a really interesting game there in week 2. But the Rams, the Rams are fascinating if you're going to kind of go off of this, because one of the things that the Rams did last year was they ended the season pretty poorly. And I think if you're probably looking at this and you're probably seeing if there's probably the first L on the scorecard, maybe at least initially, this would probably be one of those games, just because the Rams notoriously have been really good at starting hot. Yeah. And of all the matchups that I'm looking forward to on the season, this is the game. Like, this is the game I am most looking forward to seeing from a matchup side of things, schematic side of things, defense against offense type of situation. What exactly is going to be going on with that secondary, the wide receiver room that they'll be facing, all of it. Like, Matt Stafford, Bo Nix. It's going to be Les Snead going up against the quarterback that he knows so well in Bo Nix, because he's really close with his dad, Patrick Nix. So it's just going to be that kind of, circus, if you will, to begin that type of, preparation and pregame, if you will. So that's going to be a very interesting game. And again, like, I just think that in general, the first initial loss on the card, I think, is the Rams.
Yeah, I mean, the Rams are going all in on what appears to be Stafford's potentially last year. And I do think they come out of the NFC. Just an early spoiler alert. I'm in love with that Rams team, and I'm a big Sean McVay guy. But and also talking about familiar faces, the Broncos will be facing the familiar duo of Jalen Watson and Trent McDuffie, who the former duo of the corners of the Chiefs are now at the Rams. So, Cortland Sutton loves to play against Trent McDuffie, as he's had lots of success against him. Mm-hmm. And again, that's going to be another big game in terms of our cornerback duo against their wide receiver duo. It's Surtain following around Nakua, and then again that Riley Moss question mark with Devontae Adams if he's still there, and I'm assuming Adams is going to stay. But yeah, it's still a big question mark. Teams are going to love to target Moss, and if anybody knows how to beat up on the Broncos, it's Devontae Adams.
Also, Terrence Ferguson. I forgot about that. Terrence Ferguson is on the Rams. And actually, the Rams really didn't they draft? I got to look at this. Didn't they draft another really good tight end this year?
Ty Simpson? Oh.
Tight end, you dork.
Yes, they drafted Max Clear from Ohio State.
Yeah. So like they really kind of like retooled, that tight end room, because obviously you're going to have, Well, they don't have Higbee. That's right. They don't have. Well, they do have Tyler Higbee. Oh, and Parkinson.
And Parks. I mean, they're 4 tight end deep.
Yeah.
Remember, there's also the same team that utilized 12 personnel the most. And again, if you're under center and if you're going 12 personnel, you're one of the best offenses in the league. Hopefully, the Broncos under Davis Webb can do a little bit more of that.
Man, but yeah, I am really curious about that matchup. So, Davis Webb is gonna have his work cut out for him in the first 6 or so games there. So moving forward, so as far as the Rams' confidence, I will I'll still play the safe card, and I will say 50-50.
Yeah, I
But,
agree.
but as far as that, and I'm going to make a prediction as of right now. That's probably the first L of the season. Now, then we go to Levi Stadium, which the Broncos know so well, dating back to the Super Bowl 50. That they had where maybe Von Miller suits up. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. So they go to Levi Stadium and they face off against the San Francisco 49ers, against the former ball boy, water boy, if you will, who used to be a member of the Denver Broncos and whose father should be in the Hall of Fame by now.
Yes.
So obviously some massive Bronco connections through the roof. With that specific game, maybe if you want to nitpick primetime games, that is one game I am surprised is not a primetime game due to the fact that there is just so many connections of the Broncos and everything in the 49ers as well. So I am surprised that thing is not a primetime game. But I would just say that one is probably a confidence one of maybe 60%, 65%.
I will say I am a little bit more confident in that game as well. And it's just due to the rosters of both teams. And again, the 49ers acquired a lot of talent this year, starting with Mike Evans and Christian Kirk, who have revamped that wide receiver room because we don't know what's going on with Brandon Ayuk. But with Mike Evans, Christian Kirk, Ricky Pearsall.
Christian Kirk. I forgot about that. They signed Christian Kirk.
Yeah, Christian Kirk. They still have Ricky Pearsall. They got their rookie that they got from Ole Miss. So again, George Kittle's still there. Jake Tongue's from tight end room. So they did a little bit of rehauling in that playmaker department, and then defensively, they got a very familiar face and Dre Greenlaw back, and he's back there with the 49ers, and he plays good with his buddy Fred Warner, and they made a couple other additions on the defensive side, but
he'll be lamped up to play.
Oh yeah, especially with some leaks coming out, maybe it wasn't the best fit and stuff like that. Yeah. So, but again, defensively, their talent is so. I mean, again, Fred Warner, Greenlaw, 2 very good players, but Nick Bosa, if he's always hurt, and hopefully he has a healthy year, but besides those 3 guys, it's very shaky the rest of the lineup.
Yeah. So I would say 60 is probably the safe bet. Jordan, would you say?
I would agree with 60.
That moves us to the other team that is in the same state, and that would be the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, I think just the fact they're staying on that state, I think is probably the best thing about this, is that they're staying and they're just going to go ahead and play the Chargers in that same. I wonder if they just stay there. I wonder if they just stay in California. Sean Payton obviously does that for, Greenbrier when they face the Jets.
Yeah.
So I wonder if, maybe that's just a case where he just kind of just stays in California and they do some sort of training and practicing and everything, since they're just going to be basically there in California for 2 weeks. But yeah, they play the Chargers. And obviously it is well documented that the Denver Broncos are on a bit of a skid with some of the Chargers. But I think that, and obviously I say that they blasted the Chargers, at the last end of the last game of the season last year, and they faced them again this last end of the season this year. So, but it's going to be interesting. They will be in Levi, and I'm sure that, when you look at it and you look at the game that was of, the Broncos and Chargers around this point in time last year, because the Broncos played the Chargers at the early point last year. I think the Broncos would want to get some of that bad taste out of their mouth as well. So, yeah, so I would probably say 55% on this one.
Yeah, I would even raise it up a little bit to 60, 65. And the only reason I'm saying that is because the last few times they have played the Chargers, especially at SoFi, they've been winning the game. They've had control of the game, and they lose it in the fourth quarter. And I know that has to piss Sean Payton off to the max. So finally being able to finish that game and come out of there with a W is for sure going to be a priority on his mind. And I think in addition, like Jalen Waddle is going to get us over that hump. It didn't take until that fourth down touchdown pass by Nix to Sutton to get our first points of the game midway through the game. So it was a bit of a struggle there. And then once we got control of the game, had the lead, and then we gave it up. I think the year prior, we lost on that game-winning field goal off of a special teams mistake. So it's been mistakes due on the Broncos side of things where we have shot ourselves in the foot against the Chargers. So I do believe that game is going to be of priority, and I do expect the Broncos to get that game in SoFi.
Yeah. And we all know that the Broncos travel quite well, down there to SoFi, since the Chargers only have about 12 fans.
Yes.
Some were robots, because I remember that one period where I think it was during COVID, where they did robot fans. I believe it was for the Chargers. And so, because the Chargers have no fans, they had to, replicate, the majority of their fans as robots. So that leaves us with the Seattle Seahawks. Super Bowl champions. This is a wild card because obviously the popcorn is going to end up being PS2 on Jackson Smith and Jigba entire game. But it's going to be very interesting because Darnold has surprised a lot of people, myself included. I mean, he has become a really good quarterback in the league, and he's kind of become exactly what the Jets had hoped when drafting him. And it's going to be interesting. Like, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with this game, because Seattle, for as much as they, relatively speaking, had money, they lost some rather key pieces, for that team. As far as Kobe Bryant left, no relation to the Kobe Bryant, but Kobe Bryant left, the pretty good safety down there. Obviously, we know that K9 went to the Kansas City Chiefs. Jadarian Price has been added to that. He's a really good running back. I know you think he's overrated a little bit, but I mean, still, he goes to there, and frankly, I think the fact that if you're going to probably continue to nitpick a little bit, the fact that the Broncos have this at home,
yes,
and it's the beginning part of the schedule of the post-Clint Kubiak era, is going to be interesting, because having no Clint Kubiak or no offensive coordinator that you are relatively comfortable with, and I think is going to be very fascinating to watch, because, I think that's one of the reasons why when people talk about it so much, that they say, well, you have the best pairing of sometimes an offensive-minded head coach, and when you kind of have that, that's like the best possible situation, because when an offensive coordinator leaves or when a coach leaves, Well, you still have that, right? Like you still have your offensive-minded head coach still with you, and the Broncos will have that obviously if and when Davis Webb gets a job. Obviously, we can't undersell the impact that he's had because it's massive. Davis Webb has been massive, here, but it is still a great deal that Sean Payton has been the mouthpiece for Bo Nix, and the relationship that they've had. But I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a nice little measure of how good Mike McDonald is as a head coach and being a defensive-minded head coach. Is how will the next step of the OC that's been in there be in Seattle, because it is a relatively large adjustment to try and find your offensive coordinator who was well worthy of that offense or the head coaching gig down there in Vegas or anywhere else, and goes and moves on. So finding that next offensive coordinator that you can be able to work with and work with Darnold is going to be very interesting, because I think the example that I think everybody's going to go to based off currently, Jordan, is the Lions. Ben Johnson leaves and the Lions are good, but they took quite a big step back when Ben Johnson left the Lions.
Yeah. Yep. No, I agree. And that's a great point that I'm not going to lie, completely went over my head when even thinking about this game, because the first thing that I did, obviously, and I talked about it before here on this episode, that I looked at the game prior and how physical that game is going to be against the Chargers, and how that can leave a greater impact on our short week. But also with the Seahawks, the week prior they play the 49ers, which is going to be a physical game for them, another divisional game that's going to be physical. So both teams will be coming off a very physical game. So this being at home in altitude is going to play towards Denver's advantage. So once you start kind of looking in detail within the game of some of the key departures of the Seahawks, the game prior with both teams are playing, you can kind of see how you may be giving Denver a little bit more of an advantage than the Seahawks. But with that being said, with the way Darnold played last year, how great of a coach Mike McDonald is, it's still going to be a very tough game.
Yeah, it's gonna be a dogfight.
Also, Drew Lock revenge game.
Do we see Drew Lock in the game? I
hope not, because if we see him, that means that they're blowing us out, or something bad happened to Sam Darnold.
No, or
possibly we blew them out. Yeah,
I was gonna say, or we were blowing them out, and Drew Lock ends up taking the field in a 35-14.
You know how we are though in Thursday night football games.
I know
we do have a very good tendency of, making it the game of the year, if you know what I mean.
In the opposite direction.
Yeah.
What would you say the confidence of that is then for the Seahawks?
Man, I'll say like 50-50. I was going to say 45-55, but I'm going to say 50-50 just because it's at home.
I'll go 50-50 on that. And so really the two games of that stretch that we're really kind of going with the 50-50, is the Rams and the Seahawks of all things, and that's in the NFC West. Sorry.
Would love to know that betting line, even though I understand it's not out.
Yeah.
Unless I'm gonna search it up now, but I would love to know that betting line.
For which for either one, Rams, Seahawks?
Especially for that Seahawks game.
Yeah. So that'll wrap things up on the schedule portion, unless you had something else.
No, I got nothing else. I'm just searching up to see, because I know we are 2.5 point dogs against the Chiefs on the road, which I'm not mad at, to be honest.
I mean, it was a really good point that was made. I believe it was Jack in our chat. That was basically like, when you do a 2.5 overdog, if you will, it's just because it's kind of it's easy to flip, if you will, because by the time the regular season hits, right? And you're at the point of preseason and everything else. Well, it can flip the other way, and the Broncos are 2.5-point favorites. At that point, because I think that specifically too when we don't necessarily know Mahomes's health, which I think that's the other side of this too, is that maybe they don't know, the bettors don't know about Mahomes's health either. So it's just they're keeping it safe with the 2.5.
So I just found some betting lines for 6 games so far for the Broncos on DraftKings. So obviously the Chiefs won, opening night, 2.5 underdogs. And then they have a betting line for the Rams game in Denver, 2.5-point underdogs in that game. Then they have a betting line for the 49ers game in San Francisco, 2.5-point underdogs in that game. The 4th game against the Chargers in LA.
5th game.
2.5-point underdogs in that game. The Seattle Seahawks.
Oh, no.
The Seattle Seahawks on Thursday night at home. You guessed it. 2.5.
Yeah, maybe that's their default.
And then they have a random Cardinals game that I don't know why this betting line's up, but they have it, and we are favored by 7.5. So,
maybe the 2.5 is just the default.
But yeah, according to the betting market, they do expect the Broncos to really, really struggle in that beginning part.
Yeah, they do. So if for anybody that has not been following along, there was some news that was breaking from a certain former player. Obviously, I'm wearing said former player, but on Instagram, of all things, there was a post that was done. It first started, if you will, with the first three. If the first of the three was a picture of him in the 58 uniform with the song from Phil Collins, "Can You Feel the Air? Can you feel it in the air tonight?" The very famous song that everybody knows so much from Hangover. Or I should say got re-famous, because of the Hangover movie. And then he followed it up with a number 24 Photoshop that was done in an old Broncos uniform, and basically with the emoji of the I believe it was the purple head emoji, with the bubble on the head, kind of making think like he's processing something. And then he reshares his Instagram post through a Broncos content creator who's Broncos for Dummies, who does great comedic and also content work for Instagram, and she does a great podcast. Her name is Des. Great stuff. But he reshares that, basically continuing to add kerosene to even more fire, which could possibly mean that he very much wants to be a Denver Bronco. And actually, I should say this. Maybe there's a fourth one in that, and that was he shared an interview that was done by someone of the Broncos community, and they asked him about what it would be like for Von Miller to be a member of the Denver Broncos, and it was asked to Nick Benito. And Nick Benito obviously would welcome the idea of having Von Miller on his football team. And he shared that on his Instagram story. What do we make of this idea that is not an April Fool's joke, according to Von Miller?
Man, wouldn't it be awesome if that Monday Night Football game against the Chiefs in Arrowhead, we just see Von Miller running out there?
Oh, man.
Wouldn't it just be awesome?
Okay, so I was just hypothetically throwing out numbers, but I see the vision of him not wearing 58, but he wears 40, right? He wears his college number. He wears 40, and they retire 40 and 58. Sorry, Justin Sternad, by the way. But he wears 40, and then he retires a Denver Bronco after winning a second Super Bowl as a member of the team. I see the vision, but I will say this: I understand a lot of people were saying, oh well, he put himself in 24. I'm okay with that too, because that means that you have Champ Bailey and Von Miller that were both repping number 24. So I can't say no to that either. But what would you say as far as him kind of coming back and rocking a little bit of a different number that would be slightly different, if you will, than that 58?
In terms of like his number?
In terms of that number.
I mean, I wouldn't. I don't want to sound bad, but like
I know
it doesn't really matter what number Von's gonna wear. Like I don't see him wearing. I know he had that picture of him wearing 24. I don't think he's gonna wear that. I can see him coming back to 58.
No one's really wore 58, has they? Like as far as like,
I don't think so. But if he even wants to go back to 40, guess what, Justin Strnad? You're going to switch your number. All right.
The famous what is it? The funny video where they rip the
shirt. Just gets him and just rips. I mean, it would technically be that, and I think Justin Strnad is aware enough where he would just give up his jersey number.
He wore 23 in college. Not now. That would have to require.
Yeah,
I believe it would be what is it, Jade Barron to give up 23, but and then at that point Barron would have to wear number 7, and good luck with that. But no, it's definitely doable. But let's just kind of touch on this. Do I think it's a very noteworthy point when people say, does he fit schematically? And does he actually fit depth chart wise for this team? I understand where people come from there. I do. I understand, because it's something that you can't gloss over. But we are still talking about a player who had 9 sacks in a very limited amount of time with the Buffalo Bills and even the Washington Commanders. So where you're adding a rather depth piece who's clearly on the back 9 of his career and producing, when he was with the Washington Commanders, 9 sacks last year. That's more than what Jonah Ellis, who when he was an edge rusher, contributing about 5 sacks a season, Dondrea Tillman, and those were quality numbers on an edge unit that, had the highest sack rate, in football the last 2 years. So you're adding that of 9 sacks to a room that how can you possibly, say no to something like that? You know what I mean? Because it's just like, but again, it's one of those things. Like, I understand though when people don't want to bring it in just because of, you want to see the youth, you want to see the young developmental pieces of the Q Robinsons, right? The Dondrea Tillmans. Like, you want to see those players perform. And, so you definitely do want to see that. And I definitely respect that. It's just one of those things, like, and you see the numbers that he has kind of produced a little bit at the stage that he has. It is pretty hard to ignore with those small snap counts.
Yeah. And it would be like, do we really think Von Miller will be willing to play some special team snaps as well, which, just knowing that, I don't think he will be. But because again, if you're going to be, and I'm not going to say he's going to be like the last guy on the depth chart, but I mean, we do have some pass rushers that, they may not have the name, but they have shown very, very good flashes, whether it's preseason, training camp, or even games. I mean, we have seen some guys on the back end of that depth chart, showing some flashes in regular season games. So again, I would still love Von to come back. I really would. Now, usually those low-end depth chart guys usually play on special teams and get those snaps. Just don't know if Von is going to be willing to do that, or if that moves a more prominent player to do it. So there's just a lot of questions surrounding it, but I would love him back.
It's a very interesting conversation the more you kind of peel back layers because, and it just kind of dawned on me on this. One player specifically, I actually think he would be okay with it, but also he would understand, would be Q Robinson. And I know that sounds crazy, but that's just because if you do talk to Nick Saban, and we remember the conversation that had been had of Nick Saban about Q Robinson, he also called him one of the best special teams players he had ever coached. He loves playing on special teams. Now, with how wiry and how bent he is as a pass rusher, it's crazy to think he was even on special teams and how talented he was, at that point. But when you love that and you love being a part of special teams, it's something to consider a little bit, and I think there's also a world where, there used to be those years where, you don't necessarily see your best players on special teams. But I think the one part of it that really has always kind of made me appreciate Pete Carroll as a coach necessarily, where you really saw it prominently, was when he was the Seattle Seahawks head coach and you saw key contributors of your starting defense play on special teams. And I think they did that when Cam Chancellor was safety, when Earl Thomas was safety. I think he even had Richard Sherman there playing special teams as a gunner. So, I mean, like, when you value special teams like that, you're at least considering the idea of having some starting level talent, or players that are really good contributors on your special teams unit. So if you can do that, I think Q Robinson would add a lot to that special teams unit if you can do that.
I agree.
So that's at least a window where you can look at things like that. And as far as we probably didn't get a chance to talk on it, I actually haven't had a chance to talk about the draft class. You didn't do a show last week, did you?
No, not last week, though. The week before.
Yeah. So one of the last little bit of information that I think is noteworthy, and obviously, like I said, I didn't get a chance to talk about the draft class, but we did have rookie mini camp. So I'll leave the floor with you. You're not going to be leading. You're not going to be hosting. But why don't you kind of fill us in a little bit on some of those rookie minicamp highlights?
So in terms of rookie minicamp, at least in my opinion, the number one standout in that was Jonah Coleman. He was getting lots of love from reporters, seeing videos, seeing photos, seeing a whole bunch of stuff. Even his interview with the media were very, very impressive. Just a strong running back and looks a lot more explosive than what people think. So Jonah Coleman stood out from the jump, in my opinion. And then also, even though he's not a rookie, he's a second-year guy, but when Sean Payton goes out of his way to compliment and talk about a player without it being asked to him, that means you're doing something good. And the fact that he mentioned Caleb Lohner and how much he's gotten better and how much he's impressed in rookie minicamp, I think that says a lot. I think it really does.
Brandon.
We made it, boys. We made it.
Oh, Brandon.
Dude, having to go pick up your jury summons from your old address because they sent it to the wrong place. 0 out of 10 experience. Don't recommend that.
You just missed the Von Miller conversation, who quite so well.
Oh yeah,
Brendan.
My totally legitimate blood sibling relative who has signed the football that is just to the left of my camera.
And your longtime profile picture that ended up being changed in the last 2 years.
Breaks my heart, man. Breaks my heart.
You just caught us talking about rookie minicamp, but I want to know, we'll bring it back. So kind of take us through.
Man, dude, this This is brutal, man. Whoever put these schedules together, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about you. I don't know how you feel about this team, but you're like, this is if I can sum up this schedule in a couple words, literally 2 words. This is the shortest I can make it. This schedule is prove it. You made it to the AFC Championship game. You say you're a good team. Prove it. That's what the schedule tells me. Because these first 6 weeks are horrible. Like, I don't think I could have drawn up a worse schedule than this for the first 6 weeks. And it's, I don't know. This is going to be, I think this is going to be I'm actually trying to double check. The first game is on the road, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is going to be the determiner of the season. I think like the way that the season goes is going to be determined in the first 6 weeks. And the reason I say that, like, first of all, going to Arrowhead is just dirty work by the NFL because it should be in Denver. Everyone knows it should be in Denver. We swept them. We won the division. We went to the AFC Championship game. Let them play at home. Like, play in front of the fans that had the season ripped away from them on the heels of a freak injury during a play that made no sense in the moment that you had to watch unfold after you just beat the Bills in your own stadium in the divisional round as the number 1 seed. Your quarterback that you didn't have for a decade outdueled Josh Allen, and you have to witness that. And then you get to the first week of the next season and you don't even get to watch your team in the first week. This is insane. I'll get past that. But from there, it's tough, man. Like, we're going to see what this team is made out of pretty quickly.
And we touched on it, and Jordan and I, but we did talk about the fact though is that, like, there are certain situations where, like, as we were kind of talking about it and we were talking about the confidence level of each individual game, there are hypotheticals that do work, in the favor of the Broncos. And that is obviously the one that everybody talks so much about, which is the Chiefs, and may or may not see Patrick Mahomes.
That's the biggest one for sure.
I wouldn't say it's the biggest. Well, it's probably the biggest one as far as like week 1. But so there's that, but I think also doing the Jags this early for the Broncos and getting the bad taste out of their mouth for what happened at the last end of, the regular season in 2025, I think is a really good thing for them. And there's no guarantee that the Jags are going to be red hot to begin the season like they were even last year either, right? And the 49ers, they're probably the biggest wild card of the 6 games because their roster's been like strict hard as far as like old age and and with where their roster is constructed to, it's going to be tricky to see with where they're at. Obviously, they had the additions of Christian Kirk and Mike Evans, but it's not the same. Like, it is not the same necessarily playmaker unit that they've had in the past. And the defense has taken a bit of a step back as well. And then the Seahawks, funny enough, when you kind of peel it back a little bit more, and we were talking about it, Jordan and I, it's going to be very interesting. I'm not trying to like poo-poo the idea that these are all like, like tough games, if you will, because they are very tough games. But like there's a scenario there where Clint Kubiak's gone, right? Clint Kubiak's gone. That is a big offensive coordinator void for the Seattle Seahawks. And sometimes, or even more often than not, you have the best transition of that is when you have a head coach who's an offensive-minded head coach where you kind of don't miss a beat. You know what I mean? And so it's really up to Mike McDaniel to make sure that OC that is now there has a really good relationship with Sam Darnold. So where things don't really, that things are kind of status quo. You know what I mean? And they have pieces, right? They have really solid pieces as far as with Jackson Smith and Jigba, but they also did lose some pretty solid pieces there on the defensive side of the ball as well. So, and I think having it be early in that type of schedule, I think is a good thing in that, because you don't know. You really kind of don't really have an idea of what you're getting.
That's fair. I do think it also being, though, a short week, like you play the Chargers on the 11th, you then like in LA, then you come back 4 days later and play the Super Bowl champion Seahawks, who I appreciate the positive spin on it. And like, yeah, it is interesting to see what's going to happen offensively. And, is Sam Darnold legit, right? And what's going to happen there. But I think, like, to me, the biggest thing with the Seahawks is like their defense is still the defense that is probably the closest thing to Legion of Boom 2.0 that you could imagine. But I'm gonna remain the optimist and say that we're gonna go 6-0. I'm not saying that this is not doable. I just think the first 6 weeks are gonna be brutal, but
I think
we're not gonna lose a game, so it's fine. And then we're gonna cruise into the second half of the schedule that, by comparison, is kind of a cakewalk. So
I think the way that Jordan and I said is we have to at least be 3-3.
No, for sure. No, you can't get out of that first 6 weeks with a losing record, because then you're just starting behind the 8 ball in every possible way. And like the only scenario where I think that would be somewhat acceptable is like if you win both divisional games, but even then, like, I don't know, you definitely have to win at least 3, and you definitely have to win the divisional games.
Yeah, and I think to what BK was saying here, it's like, it's to a certain degree, it's like and me and Jordan talked about it in our green room, and we talked about it before you hopped on, Brandon, but it's like, it's kind of an unpopular opinion a little bit for me, but it's like, I'm not trying to dismiss the idea that this is like a murderer's row to begin the season, right? Like, it is a murderer's row to begin the season. But for a team that is started slow under Sean Payton, to begin the year, this, I think, is going to force them to really start off the season in a really good form. Like they have to be able to hit the ground running as much as possible to begin these 6 games. And I think that having that to begin the season will make them a much better football team once you kind of get to these easier slate of schedules like the Panthers, the Steelers, the Dolphins, etc.
To that point, though, I do think that is definitely worth bringing up, and that's an interesting point. Davis Webb, you're up. Davis Webb, you're up, because we don't know what that's going to look like, and hopefully this isn't a scenario where you switch the offense around enough and you get a new play caller, get a new OC, to the point where it takes a little bit of time to get going and gel. Like, you can't have that with this schedule. You can't have that. So maybe things change under Davis Webb, and it's not the slow start that you kind of got used to seeing. And we'll see, like, is that Bo? Was that Sean? What truly was the cause of that? Mm-hmm. But yeah, that'll be interesting for sure.
Are we excited for the first game on the Chiefs? I am excited because I still don't think that Mahomes is going to play week 1.
I'm, in a weird way, I'm actually kind of disappointed that it's week 1, because I kind of want to play Patrick Mahomes. Like, I know that that's crazy, but aside from that just being a good game, like, no. I want to beat you at your best. I want the Chiefs to know that we're the threat, and I want to sweep them again where they have there's no excuse. And like, I know that really wasn't the case, last season specifically, but I think that I would rather, like, honestly, I'd rather go into Arrowhead week 1 against a fully healthy Chiefs team and just dismantle them. Like, we could lose the next 5 games and I would be so happy. Like, I wouldn't even care. I know that's probably not going to happen. in terms of, I don't even know if Mahomes is playing, but like in a weird way, I'm actually kind of disappointed that he might not play week 1. And I think I would be more excited if he was, which maybe I'm a sociopath. I don't know.
If the Chiefs were a playoff team last year, it'd be the first time in NFL history that a team would open up with 6 playoff teams from the year before for the first 6 games. That's how insane. That's how insane this stretch is.
I mean, let's be real. They're a playoff team. Like they're a playoff team. Even though
you're talking the Broncos.
No, the Chiefs. Oh. Like if Patrick Mahomes is healthy, that's a playoff team. Mm-hmm. Like even though they didn't look good, it's the Chiefs. It's the NFL's golden boy. They're going to be let into the playoffs. So this is the first time.
But it's also, it's one of those takeaways, Brandon, that I think is one that I was hoping for to begin this or to do this season. And it's a slight change in what we've seen in the past. But I am so grateful, whether it have been the Chargers or the Chiefs, but you're getting rid of the Chiefs before your bye. So
that is true.
So that you can be able to sweep the Chiefs, and so by the time that it's the end of the season, you swept them and you own the tiebreaker. It was my hope that it was either the Chargers or the Chiefs that we were going to end up getting that, and so we ended up with the Chiefs, and you now can possibly own the tiebreaker over the Chiefs before Week 18.
I do like that. That is definitely, I think, a benefit of how challenging the first half of this is. But that's a good point.
Yeah. So as far as, and obviously, Brandon, you are very experienced with the amount of, schedule release shows that you and I do. The next questions that are going to be asked, which is, what is the trap game? And the ceiling and floor, because you can't say one without the other.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, that's weird. It's hard to say. Like, part of me is like, do I believe in trap games? I don't know. There's a couple things that stick out to me. Like, you talked about the 49ers maybe not being as big of a threat as like you think. And I don't necessarily disagree, because I think you're right. Their roster kind of was gutted. But to me, it's like, okay, is Kyle Shanahan still the coach? Check. Is Brock Purdy still the quarterback? Right. Check. Is Christian McCaffrey alive? Check. They're a problem. Okay, check those 3 boxes and it's a problem. And like, that's not even factoring in George Kittle or Mike Evans, who they just acquired. So like, I think that could be, if you define trap game as like, oh, this looks easy, quote unquote, and it's like actually much more difficult, maybe even like potentially a loss, I could see that one. The Jags, I don't know, that's kind of a weird one. To me, the number one thing, and this kind of feels weird to think about and say, and sucks honestly to even think about and say, I don't know what's gonna happen with the Raiders, but not playing them until week 11.
That's what Cam
said. They could kind of get some stuff together. Like, I don't know, if they come out of the gates a little bit slow, and then Fernando Mendoza starts to kind of put it together, and they get a better run game from Ashton Genty than they did last year, because they have any form of an upgraded run blocking unit. That could kind of be spicy and suck. And I'd rather almost play them earlier in the year, where they don't have 11 weeks to start to get some cohesion. I don't know, that might be hard.
The game I started with, Brandon, was one that, at least for the slate of the 6 of the 8 games, or the 8 games, was the Cardinals.
Really?
Just because of the fact that it's one of the first times we've actually had the Chiefs that early in the season being taken care of, and it's at home, right? And who knows what could possibly be transpired there. The Cardinals are also kind of have some sneaky weapons a little bit down there in Arizona, and it's the LaFleur family. You have no idea what you're going to be getting with the LaFleur family. And who knows? We're still talking. You're playing the entirety of the NFC West in this stretch, and so it's just very interesting, kind of like how that all, transpired. But it's just one where I'm obviously thinking it's a win, but it's just one where you just never know. And then they kind of lended me to the idea that, there's also the Raiders too, because they could start Mendoza week 1, right? Like they could start Mendoza week 1. I don't think they will,
No.
but they could start Mendoza week 1. And then all of a sudden you just have this situation of like, well, gee, he's already entered the amount of games that he has played in a college football season. So who knows? He might actually just flip a switch in a corner of just like, oh, wow, he's this different quarterback that we had seen in a bad /good way, if you will, for the Raiders. So I don't know. It's just it's definitely one where it's like I can definitely see them being a little bit of a surprise. And I think I still think, by the way, this is just a point before we talk about more of the to transition to the Von Miller stuff for you, Brandon, so you can get caught up. But it's like I actually see a role. I don't think it happens, but because I have the Raiders finishing last. But I think there's a very real world that because of what we saw with the Chiefs, and again, I know what I said earlier, but with how bad the Chiefs looked last year, truly, with how bad the Chiefs looked last year, there is a scenario, like there's at least a scenario where we could see the exact same situation sort of with the Chiefs, and it's far more competitive of an AFC West this year, and the Chiefs finish last. Like there's at least a world.
It could happen. I mean, going back real quick to the Raiders, I'm looking at their schedule and trying to figure out like when it would make sense to start Fernando Mendoza. I don't know. It's kind of weird because they start with the Dolphins, which like would almost make sense actually to start him then, because that's probably the easiest schedule, the easiest game that they have, because then it's Chargers, Saints, who I think the Saints actually might be kind of spicy this year.
I'm with you.
Then the Chiefs, the Patriots, the Bills, and the Rams. Like the Raiders opening schedule is kind of insane too. And then it's the Jets in week 8, which I think is, to me, it's like week 1 or week 8 are the two places I could see him starting. The thing that sucks is like, even if it's not till week 8, it's like, that's kind of enough time to start to put something together, I think. And the only reason that maybe even like week 8 doesn't make sense is then it's like week 8, you're starting him. He's on the road. You're on the road in week 9. He comes home against the division or the Super Bowl champions in week 10. And then he's back on the road again against the Broncos in the Mile High. I don't know. That's kind of a rough stretch. So like, I think it kind of makes almost the most sense to start in week 1. So I don't know. We'll see, but it'll be interesting. I do think there's a world where the Chiefs could finish last. Unfortunately, I don't think we live in that world because they're still the golden boy, but it could happen.
Yeah. So regarding, if you will, the Von Miller situation, would you sign him?
It breaks my heart to say this, but I think I would say no.
No, come on, Brandon.
Hold on. Let me explain. Okay. Let me rephrase. It depends on the context of why and how you're signing him. The reason I say that, not about the money, not about the contract. What are you signing him to do? Because if you're signing him to just be a veteran presence and almost like a coach who's in the locker room, awesome. Love it. Fantastic. If you're not, tell me who you're taking off the field to give Von Miller snaps. And I'm sorry, it just sucks. Like that doesn't help you. And I wish that it helped you, but I just don't see how that is a net benefit. He's 37. I love Von Miller. I want him on this team. I would have him on this team as a coach, or even just like, I guess as like just a depth piece, it would be okay. As like, okay, strictly if someone goes down and you need someone. But I'm like, again, it's I don't even know if I would want to put him in rotationally, because it's like there's other players that I want to get some snaps and some experience that I think showed enough to maybe warrant being more of like in the rotation to spell some of the other guys. Like Q Robinson jumps to my head. I don't know. It's a very packed room, and it's like, again, it's like, what are you signing him to do? And at the same time, if you're not signing him to play, then it's like you're also kind of almost hesitant to say wasting a roster spot, but it's like you could have used that on someone else, right? You probably would be, right? So I think I'm still going to lean towards no. There's a world where I would say yes for sure, and like there's a scenario where that would make sense. And it breaks my heart to say it, but it's like, what is he going to add to that room? I don't know the answer to that question, and I think you're almost shooting yourself in the foot by taking snaps away from players that are either just straight up like better at this stage in their career, or like have shown enough promise to where like you probably want to give them some more snaps and have them be like ready to go if you need them, or play them rotationally. I don't know.
Yeah,
it sucks. It's tough. But I would love to have Vaughn back. Hire him as a coach for real. Like if he's deciding that he's maybe ready to hang it up and he wants to coach, I would be totally for that. And I mean, again, I would even still be for it if it's like you're signing him and he's kind of going to be just like a veteran presence and a coach, and maybe like a glass break in case of emergency kind of stash. But again, just who you're taking off the field.
Yeah, it kind of just falls on the category of special teams, and I think that there's at least the angle, though. There is at least an angle where you can ask Q Robinson to play special teams, and if you do, and we talked about that, Jordan and I before you hopped on, but like there is a world where Q Robinson will say yes.
Oh, he will say yes. I mean, if you heard the way that Nick Saban talks about that guy,
exactly,
he'll say yes. But it's like, is that the best use of Q Robinson? I don't know that that's true.
Right. So then we're all kind of caught up and now talking about rookie minicamp, and with where we are for rookie minicamp, and obviously Brandon is about as caught up as I am when it comes to the drafts. And so Jordan, go ahead and take us with those rookie minicamp highlights.
Yeah, so as I was saying when Brandon was joining, Jonah Coleman was obviously the headliner, at least in my opinion, looking strong, looking explosive as he was. Yeah. And the other one that caught our eye was the unprompted mention of Caleb Lohner from Sean Payton, which Sean Payton never does. And he brought up Caleb Lohner and how much he's improved and how much how better he looks just on the field in terms of everything football related. So I thought that was very interesting because, again, Sean Payton's not a coach to be doing that. Mm-hmm. And for him to bring it upon himself and talk about Lohner like that, I'm very, very intrigued, because if Lohner becomes another, because remember, when we drafted Lohner, we all knew that this was going to be a project, and it was going to take 2 to 3 years to maybe even see him on the field and see if he was worth it. Now, heading into year 2, if he's improved this much, it adds another layer into this tight end room where Caleb Lohner is, I don't want to say by far, but he is the most athletic one in the tight end room. I mean, even Justin Jolly said it at rookie minicamp, saying he couldn't believe how athletic Caleb Lohner was, and that's because of his basketball background. Mm-hmm. But if Caleb Lohner really has improved this much and is really making noise, it adds another layer into this tight end room where now a weakness may be becoming not necessarily a strength, but a room where you don't have to worry as much.
Like a league average almost.
Correct. Which is big because we have not been league average in that room for, it seems, about a decade.
That is true.
If you can add someone like Caleb Lohner with the physical traits that he has, it adds a dimension that not a lot of teams have, if I'm being quite honest.
It does. I mean, it is exciting to think about too, because I mean, as much as this trend has kind of been bucked a little bit in the past couple of years, like tight end is that position that's just like notoriously takes a little bit to develop. And he was obviously a rookie last year. Maybe just like having him be in the NFL for a season and just able to sit there and develop and not really be worried about needing to play right away could have sped that up a little bit. And yeah, I'm intrigued to see. I'm intrigued to see what he does, because the door is wide open, man. Whoever can come in and show something, like, you have the opportunity to be the guy in a very big way. And so like the opportunity is absolutely there. Is someone going to come in and seize it? I sincerely hope so. I don't even care who it is. I just want a good tight end. Like, it's if Evan Ingram somehow gets 4 years younger and comes in and looks explosive and like is the guy, I would be happy with that. Like, I just want a tight end. I don't care who it is. I don't care where they come from. If it's Caleb Lohner, give it to me. But yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. I will say the biggest thing about rookie minicamp for me is it's just more like, do they look the part, right? Like, do they look the part? But it does make it very enticing when you get something that's being said out of his own way, like out of like just out in the open, like Caleb Lohner, right? And that's when you really kind of gravitate to the idea: is this just coach speak, or is this just an idea that like, well, why did he just say this? You know what I mean? But I think that's the idea, is like, if you're clearly seeing the situation of a player who's looking the part, it's kind of noteworthy when it comes to be Caleb Lohner. Specifically, you know, you already know that as a former basketball player, converted football player, that the athleticism is there. And now if he's actually like looking at the part of blocking and being a bit of a physical tight end due to that size, that 6'7", 250 some pound frame, right? That that he has. It's something you can't exactly ignore, but it's also one where you also don't want to be too optimistic and be like, oh, at this particular point in time, Caleb Lohner is going to be making the 53-man roster. I think it's a bit too premature to have that kind of conversation, but it's still something you want to file away and be like, oh, well, this started because of a comment that was made by Sean Paton back in rookie minicamp when he literally singled him out. So it's just something that you want to file away. But I mean, as far as like the other conversation, this kind of just lends itself to the idea that the draft class in general, and Jordan, if you already talked about this, when they had the draft or recapping the draft the week after, I apologize, but it was just like this draft really kind of felt reminiscent to 2021. Because and obviously if it hits that way, it hits that way. But the way I phrase that and the way I talk about that is that when you look at it from the standpoint of, George hit on some certain picks when they had small capital, guys like Riley Moss, Nick Bonito, Marvin Mims, those types of players, right? J.L. Skinner's a rather solid depth piece, in general. Like, he hit on some of those players like that. But here's a situation where in 2021, he was drafting players and also had like incredible value for those said picks, right? And I think that when you look at this draft in 2026 and you go up and down pretty much every single pick, there is a definition for just tremendous value for nearly every single pick. And you don't need to look no further specifically from the Mr. Irrelevant and the Dallin Bentley pick, the Red Murdoch and the Dallin Bentley pick, because like that was like, you could not have asked for a better like back-to-back situation where specifically when you peel it back and you're like, okay, wow, we're looking at undrafted free agents at this point in time who probably are rather high priority for a lot of teams. And I think they even said themselves, they are getting calls for that Mr. Irrelevant pick, right, for Red Murdoch, because they wanted to draft Red Murdoch. right? And the Broncos actually did themselves a favor and took Red Murdoch, right? And then also double dipped at tight end with Dallin Bentley, who I actually liked Bentley. I didn't think he was going to be there in the 7th round, or at least, the second to last pick in the NFL draft. And then lo and behold, they take Bentley to go along with Justin Jolie, and you really complement your tight end room in this class. Like, it felt like the ultimate completion of a recruiting class, not to kind of blend college, but it was like you blended something that is like a recruiting class for a tight end, 2 tight ends that work really well together, a linebacker in Red Murdoch, and a Taurine York who should have been drafted in general as well. And you blend him for possibly what can be the future of your linebacker core. And then you draft a running back for maybe the future of what can be post J.K. Dobbins, and then you draft Cade Casey for maybe that developmental offensive lineman who's versatile enough to play pretty much anywhere on your offensive line. And Tyler Onyadam, who we know that there's not really a case where they've been very productive at A&M, but they are physical freaks there at A&M, so he's going to fit the bill there a little bit. And Justin Jolie is like your Swiss Army knife who's going to finally replace Nate Atkins off this roster, and so it's just I just think they really kind of hit home runs on a lot of these picks when it comes to value.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first one you mentioned with Red Murdoch, I was very surprised that he was still on the board, if I'm being quite honest. I thought that was a tremendous pick in terms of value. Another one that I thought was tight end Justin Jolly. I thought he was going to go way before. But just off of pure athleticism, he's going to be one where I think he's going to be the one that takes that step and is the leader of that tight end room. I think he's going to have a significant impact just in his rookie year, and I wouldn't be surprised if he has a similar impact that Harold Fanning Jr. had with the Browns. I think that highly of Justin Jolly. And the rest of this draft class, I think it's going to be guys where when we look 2-3 years down the line, they're going to be contributors at their positions, which is what you want. We've seen other draft classes where guys don't even hit the field. They're practice squad guys and stuff like that. But I do believe that these guys in this draft class are going to be contributors for the Broncos in 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take the low-hanging fruit of Jonah Coleman.
Yeah.
Jonah Coleman, probably my favorite pick in this class, just because other than the fact that I've been desperately craving another running back on this team, I do think that he's kind of the perfect fit for what we are trying to do. And also I think George Paton specifically has a little bit of a type with what he likes in his running backs, because he reminds me of Javonte Williams in just the way that he runs and just the insane balance that he has, where he just he's a bowling ball. He just kind of bounces off people and you can't bring him down. And he just kind of he has those runs where it's just he's not going to be denied. He's getting into the end zone no matter what you do. And I think he's going to be just a perfect running back for this team. Even with J.K. Dobbins, he's going to just be the J.K. Dobbins replacement. But I also think as much as I love RJ Harvey, you needed someone else there. RJ Harvey can be your out of the backfield passing game weapon and give you some just some different uses to spell your physical guys in Dobbins and Coleman. But RJ Harvey, as much as again, I love him, and he had 12 touchdowns last year, I don't know, he didn't really ever show it to you. He didn't have any specific time where he jumped off the page and is okay, that's the guy. That's why we took him. That's the running back. He's the future of the running game. He's going to give you the juice that you need. You just kind of never really saw that, unfortunately. And also just he's not that good at pass protection. And Jonah Coleman is so good at pass protection. I love it.
Well, but I think it's also respectful to keep the excitement to maybe a minimum a little bit for Jonah, because I think the initial part of this for me is I think he's got a future. I think he's got a future post J.K. Dobbins, but I think the initial side of this is also the beginning snaps that he will have, which is no more Tyler Bidet snaps, right?
Yeah.
Which is frankly a big deal for this. And I think that it also should call us into remembrance that for as bizarre as it was in this offseason, Jordan, and stuff, and Brandon, of like everybody that they signed, there was like 1 year deals of like $1 to $2 million in contracts that they can get out of after this year. They can also release them as much as they can this year as well for some of these draft picks. You know what I mean? So guys like Lucas Kroll, Nate Atkins, right, Tyler Bidet, some of those questionable, re-signings that they had. Maybe not so much Adam Troutman, but but they can definitely move off of guys like, the Lucas Krolls, Nate Atkins, Julio McLaughlin's, the Tyler Bidets, players that really didn't offer much at this point, and now you really have a bona fide three-headed monster of the running game that you can really lean on, where Tyler Bidet, really the only thing he was significant for was pass pro in third down. Other than that, he really didn't offer a great deal.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that's definitely significant. Maybe I'm crazy. I see Jonah Coleman having more snaps than maybe people think.
I think was it, like 24 carries or touches or whatever it was that Tyler Bidet, he'll have more, but it's just like just the simple fact he's already such an elite pass protector.
Yeah.
I think is just the one where it's like he'll begin there. It's just what's going to build off of that.
I just think he's the kind of player that, like, yeah, he's going to start there, but he's also going to have the runs that you kind of saw again from Javonte Williams. I'm specifically thinking of against the Ravens, where he just like refused to be tackled and carried guys for like 15 yards. I don't know. I could see something like that happening where it's like, you got to give this guy more carries. Like, you just can't not do it. So I do think he's going to do more. I'm not saying that like the other guys don't have a place. Like, obviously RJ Harvey's still going to be putting work in, and like he's going to be the passing game weapon. Like, he's so good out of the backfield. If he can get better at not bouncing things outside and running through and like reading rushing lanes better and like kind of running more in the middle, I think he could also still take a step for sure. And then, J.K. Dobbins, when he's healthy, is like borderline a top 8 running back in the league already. I just think Jonah Coleman is like going to be in that mold where he's going to have plays where it's like, you have to give this guy more carries. And, yeah, I don't know where those are going to come from, and I do think like there's still room for everyone there. I will not draft any of these guys in fantasy. I'm going to tell you that right now. Like, fantasy players are going to hate the Broncos running back room like they already do with Sean Payton in general, but it's going to be a three-headed monster, and you have no idea what it's going to look like. But I do think that Jonah Coleman is going to take some more rushing snaps than you would expect, and he's definitely going to be the pass pro guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other final thoughts as far as like, rookie minicamp? Obviously there's gonna be more to talk about, for maybe next week's show or stuff, but any other final thoughts?
Not on my end.
Let's go boys.
Let's go.
We're getting sort of closer, maybe ish.
Oh, I guess the most important thing is, did you like the Broncos schedule release video, Brandon?
I'll be honest, I actually haven't seen the video yet. I'm like halfway through the Chargers video because I have to.
I'll have to fact check
that. But I like looked up the schedule, so I knew like what we were playing, but I have not seen the video yet.
Better than years prior. I
am currently just enjoying the flashback to Halo that the Chargers have given us. And I'm also... the reason specifically I picked them is I'm curious to see if and how they troll Mike Vrabel, because I saw that there was a report that the NFL will not be looking for that. No spoilers. Do not tell me.
There were 3. We'll just say that.
Shh. But then I'll watch the Broncos win next.
I'll have to fact check that.
The Vikings had a good one of Vrabel and Rossini.
The Falcons were really good.
That whole situation is actually insane.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, it's gross. And
yeah,
I think Mike Vrabel should resign, actually, but that's a different conversation.
It's a different conversation for another day. Yeah, definitely. So for Brandon, myself, and Jordan, we would just want to say thank you guys for hopping on and being a part of the Mainly Broncos stream. And make sure to hit the subscribe button for the Mainly Broncos YouTube page as well as the MHRT Network page. It feels really good to have the full squad back in action. So thank you guys for hopping into another stream. We might be back next week, depending on what, as far as we hear, as far as some Bronco news and everything. We'll keep you posted. But remember, this is it's a new week. It's a new time, if you will. So we're going to be going live every Thursday now, not Wednesday, but every Thursday as much as we can until, say the regular season rolls around and we've got this Seattle Seahawks game on that Thursday night. We'll be going at Wednesday, the night before to ensure we at least get you guys covered for a Mainly Broncos show. And then obviously, for that NFL draft, if there's something that is, we will be doing it on Wednesday or just any special occasion. Like if we have a guest who just so happens to not want to do a Thursday and he's a special guest, we really want to fit him in, we'll acquiesce the request and, get him on. So thank you guys so much for hopping on. Make sure you follow the boys, support the boys at Jordan T. Lopez and at Brandon Miller PO. And before we go, God bless Bo Nix.
Let's go Broncos! God bless Bo Nix!
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame out.